On Mother's Day, I decided to surprise my mom with a bouquet of flowers, her favorite fragrance, and a heartfelt handwritten letter. But to my dismay, she tossed everything into a trash bag. This year, I had hoped for a different outcome, not perfect, not extraordinary, but softer. I'm not entirely sure why I felt this way. Perhaps it was because I had been so busy with work that I hadn't had time to overthink things. Or maybe it was because I had recently helped her with her taxes, and she genuinely said, "Thank you," without any hint of obligation. When I texted her last week to confirm our brunch plans, she responded with a smiley face, not an emoji, but an old-school colon in parenthesis, reminiscent of the text she used to send me back in middle school before everything changed. So, I allowed myself to feel hopeful. I picked up her favorite perfume, the one she used to wear when I was a child, and called me sweetheart in public. I bought fresh flowers from a local florist, not the grocery store, and I spent hours crafting a handwritten letter. This wasn't your typical Hallmark card filled with generic platitudes. I poured my heart into it, expressing that I understood things hadn't always been easy, that I respected all she had sacrificed for me, and that I still loved her, even if she didn't always seem to want me around. It wasn't desperate, it was honest. I convinced myself that brunch could be a reset, a way to reconnect. Mom had me when she was just out of high school, and for a while, it was just the two of us, messy yet close. Then, when I was 10, she met Jake, her current husband. At first, he seemed decent, quiet, and practical. I thought I was gaining a new family member, but I didn't realize I was about to fade into the background. When my half-brother, Zach, was born, I became more of a reminder of her past than her son. Jake preferred a clean slate, a nuclear family. You could feel it in the way he always referred to Zach as our boy but never acknowledged me as his stepson unless someone specifically asked. Yet, I remained hopeful because sometimes the need to be wanted outweighs all the reasons you should know better. So, when I arrived at the house that morning with gifts in hand, I felt a mix of happiness and nervousness, but also a sense of pride. I felt like I was showing up as an adult, someone worth having at the table. The house looked beautiful. She always went all out for special occasions, mimosas, cloth napkins, and proper place cards. It had that Pinterest vibe. When I walked in, she looked up from the table and said, "Oh, you made it." For a brief moment, I thought she meant it, that maybe this time I had finally done something right. I handed her the flowers and the perfume. She examined the bottle as if it were a receipt she didn't remember authorizing. "Oh, you remembered this one," she remarked, but her tone was more observational than warm. "I didn't let it get to me." I smiled and said, "They only had one left." She nodded, already returning to the table. Zach was animatedly discussing dorm life and how his economics professor looked like someone who had never paid rent. Everyone laughed, and I took my seat. My place setting had a folded napkin but no card. Nobody had saved me a mimosa. It was fine, I poured myself some juice like a responsible adult. Jake asked how work was going and then turned away before I could finish my answer. My mother was busy adjusting the centerpiece, and Zach passed the salt to me without looking. This wasn't new, but today it felt heavier, perhaps because I had tried harder this time. Maybe it was because the letter was still in my jacket pocket, and I was contemplating when to give it to her. I had sealed it in a crimson envelope and used a decent pen. "Does anyone want more coffee?" I offered, but my mother either didn't hear me or chose to ignore me. Halfway through lunch, Zach shot me a smirk. "So, do you enjoy celebrating Mother's Day from a distance now, or is this a charitable visit?" Jake laughed, and my mom remained silent, simply sipping her drink. I smiled, pretending nothing bothered me, and said, "Well, I didn't bring a coupon, but I did bring a gift." Zach grinned, "Cool. Did you send it to her via Venmo like last year?" "Nope," I replied, "this year it's actually in writing." I stood up, pulled the letter from my pocket, and placed it next to her plate. The red envelope stood out starkly against the white tablecloth, like a splash of blood. I didn't get much sleep that night, but I made one decision before the sun rose. By the next morning, my phone was ringing off the hook with her calls. I used to think that changes happened gradually, like the slow erosion of a coastline, and that you wouldn't notice until it was too late. But looking back, I realize it all happened much faster than I was willing to admit. She met Jake when I was 10. He came over for dinner a few times before becoming a regular fixture in our lives. One morning, I woke up to find his car parked in the driveway, his shoes scattered in the hallway, and my mom wearing more makeup than usual. She smiled at him in a way she hadn't in years, and I remember thinking, oh. Not long after, the baby arrived. I was still 10, and I did the math later, but I don't think she expected me to at the time. In what felt like a single breath, she and Jake had created an entirely new family, complete with new habits and rules. Where the home office used to be, there was now a nursery. A second fridge in the garage was stocked with formula and organic baby food. A chore chart hung on the wall, and my name was nowhere to be found. Naturally, they were busy, newborns are a handful. So, I told myself it made sense when they didn't ask how my spelling test went, didn't show up for my school play, or left me waiting outside in the rain for karate practice. They were just tired. I thought it was a phase, something I could wait out. But it didn't pass. The baby grew, and they adored him. He took his first steps, and they cheered. He said "Dad," and they cried. When I brought home a school award, my mom simply said, "That's great. Can you keep an eye on your brother while I take a nap?" It wasn't that she stopped loving me overnight, it was as if she began to love someone else more loudly. Over time, the silence became unbearable. By the time I left for college, the house felt foreign to me. Every wall was adorned with photos of them, smiling at parks, wearing matching holiday pajamas, and my brother perched on Santa's knee. I wasn't in any of those pictures, not even in my high school graduation photo. It was as if I had been erased. I remember walking past a framed canvas by the stairs that read, "Family is everything," and thinking, yeah, but not this one. Yet, I kept trying. That's the part that still embarrasses me. I showed up for holidays, bought birthday gifts, and even helped with expenses when I knew money was tight. I found out they had taken a vacation and simply forgot to tell me. I helped Jake land a job by leveraging my connections to get him an interview for a client-facing role he wasn't qualified for. He nailed it. When no one is fact-checking you, charisma can take you far. They never acknowledged my help, but that was fine. I reminded myself I wasn't doing it for recognition, I was doing it to stay connected, to feel like I was still part of their lives. Even after I got my own apartment and a decent job, I continued to reach out, calling my mom on random Wednesdays just to say, "Hope your day is going well." Sometimes she responded, but other times I'd wait days for a reply. When she did answer, it felt like a breath of fresh air. She texted me once after I helped her with some insurance paperwork, saying, "You always come through." Thank you. I reread that message for weeks. I'm not proud of it, but if you've ever felt invisible to someone you used to be close to, you'll understand why this year's brunch hurt so much. I had allowed myself to believe we were turning a corner. She confirmed the invitation with a smiley face in her text. She thanked me after I helped with her taxes. She didn't ask for money. That month, I felt like things might be leveling out. Maybe she was softening again. For a brief moment that morning, standing on her porch with flowers, a heartfelt letter, and the perfume she used to wear when I was younger, I felt like a son again. But then she smiled at my brother's joke about me being part of the family and remained silent when Jake interrupted me mid-sentence to steer the conversation toward stock options. When I handed her the envelope, she barely glanced at it, the one I had spent the night writing, the one where I told her I loved her even when it hurt and felt one-sided. Then she tossed it away. I kept seeing it, the bag outside the garage, the folded-in crumpled red envelope, the unopened perfume box, and the half-crushed flowers buried under other trash. I didn't respond to her messages, instead, I allowed her to panic. I wanted her to mentally retrace her steps, to wonder how much she had thrown away, both literally and metaphorically. It wasn't true, of course, there was no cash in that envelope, but she didn't realize it. Now, every time she thought about that garbage bag, she felt the weight of the potential loss, the idea that she might have discarded something important, not just a gift, not just money, but something that could have saved us. And now it was gone. Around midday, Jake finally texted me, "You are being childish. This is a significant issue. Could you please inform us whether you are lying?" I almost responded with something snarky like, "Consult the garbage truck." Instead, I silenced my phone and kept moving forward. There was one final step I needed to take. I checked my contacts and found the names of 3 people I had personally introduced to Jake, people he currently worked with, client leads, vendors, and an old acquaintance who had helped him secure a side contract. I sent them all a version of the same message: "Hi, I just wanted to ask that from now on, please do not associate my name with Jake Hatcher. There's nothing dramatic, just a personal boundary." I hope that makes sense. There were no details, no chatter, just enough to let them feel the weight of it, enough to make them question what had happened behind the scenes, enough to loosen several threads. I understood how that universe worked. Jake's entire employment relied on his reputation as a trustworthy guy with connections. If I quietly stepped back, others would follow suit. By the end of the week, he had already lost a long-term recommendation. A contract was paused, and another client preferred to work directly with someone else. I didn't even have to lift a finger, just one email and a few well-placed words, and the machine began to unwind itself. That night, my phone vibrated again. "Have you found it? Kindly answer, I need to know." I assumed she was referring to the bag, but I had already disposed of everything. "I saw the bag you're talking about, but everything is now gone. Please tell me if this is real." I looked at her name on the screen for a moment, imagining responding with something harsh and final, but that would give her closure. So, I did nothing. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about making them feel the weight I had carried since I was 10 years old, when I stopped being her whole world and became a nuisance she couldn't wait to discard. This was about seeing them struggle in silence, finally realizing what I had been saying for years: you can't continually erase someone and expect them to remain loyal. I realized I had lied. I knew the envelope never existed, but the pain, the withdrawal, and the abandonment were all too real. For the first time in my life, they couldn't ignore it. My mother left me a voicemail that night. Her voice was shaky, she wasn't crying yet, but you could sense the desperation seeping through her calmness. "Kindly call me, please. I did not know. I did not see it. I would have never if I had known what was inside. Please call me." "Okay, I apologize if please call." She didn't say "I love you." She didn't say "I'm sorry" like she meant it. It was just panic, as if she had misplaced something essential and couldn't remember where she put it. I still didn't respond. The next morning, my aunt texted me, saying my mother had called her crying. She told my aunt that I was being unkind, withholding, and tough. My aunt's message was simple: "If I were you, I wouldn't answer." That made me smile because, for once, someone noticed it. I really saw it: how much I had given, how little I had received, and how peacefully I had endured being nothing until it became unbearable. That weekend, I stowed the gifts away in my closet. I didn't want to keep them, but I also wasn't ready to throw them away. They were no longer reminders of her, they were reminders of me, the version of myself who persevered. And I wasn't trying anymore. I was finished. By Monday, she had stopped asking whether I was okay and began demanding answers. Her texts ranged from "I'm sorry you're upset" to "you need to stop this now." Jake emailed me directly, using a professional tone as if we were negotiating a contract rather than untangling a decade of hidden animosity. He stated that my decision to disconnect was harming his career and hoped I would reconsider for the sake of the family's stability. Translation: "Your silence is costing me money." I didn't respond. Then Zach got involved. "Family," she retorted, her voice sharp. "You've embarrassed your brother. Jake's job is hanging by a thread. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand exactly what that means," I replied quietly. She stared at me, her eyes intense. "You're doing this out of spite over one party." I tilted my head. "Is that what you think?" She folded her arms. "We raised you. We paid for your clothes, your food, your school." I nodded slowly. "And I gave you a down payment on this house, covering your utility bills for 2 years. I offered to help with Zach's tuition, but sure, let's talk about the time you bought me sneakers in 5th grade. That broke something in her. Her jaw clenched. "That was your choice. We never asked you to help." "No," I replied. "You didn't ask. You just expected it. Expected me to pick up the slack when Jake forgot the mortgage was due. Expected me to understand when you skipped my birthday because Zach had a test. Expected me to stay quiet when you smiled while he called me half family like I was an accident. She opened her mouth, but I continued. And you expected me to keep giving, even after you threw away the only thing I had left to offer. That landed. She blinked, and something flickered in her expression, perhaps remorse or simply discomfort. Then she attempted one more play. You're punishing the wrong person, she explained. You're punishing your brother. He didn't throw anything away. I grinned, tight and exhausted. You want to talk about the letter? She paused, and I saw it in her eyes. Mom, I replied, I saw it in the trash bag next to the garage. I took it back. Her face transformed. The sharpness melted into something smaller and weaker. I didn't know, she replied. I thought maybe you'd taken it with you. I wasn't sure. You weren't sure? I repeated. I didn't mean to. You never do. I didn't yell, I didn't raise my voice. I just let her hear it, really hear it. I'm not dropping the act just so you can feel better. I told you I'm not cleaning up the mess. And if Jake has to answer for how he got that job, that's not my problem anymore. She looked at me as if I had grown a second head, as if the peaceful, trustworthy version of myself had been murdered in his sleep and replaced by someone unknown. Then she said it, you're not just punishing Jake, you're punishing this family. I nodded. Then maybe this family should have stopped treating me like a stranger with a checkbook. I walked back inside, not looking back. 2 days later, Zach shared a hazy, dramatic story about people who abandon their family when times get tough. A few mutual friends enjoyed it. One cousin contacted me individually. Is that about you? I responded, probably. And if it is, good. I heard Jake began hemorrhaging clients. People were questioning their partnerships. One of the vendors I introduced pulled their contract, and he was asked to quit a month later. They termed it reorganization. Everyone realized Zach's tuition wasn't paid, and he had to defer. I never said anything about it, not because I wanted to be unkind, but because silence was the only language they never learned to understand. A few weeks after the office scene, my mom, Jake, and Zach called me as a group. I didn't respond. They left a voicemail. We just want to talk, she murmured, sweet and cautious, like someone attempting to reset a chessboard after flipping it. Zach mumbled, sorry, I guess. Jake didn't speak. Then my mother added, you made your point. So what now? You're disowning us? I replayed the message twice, once to hear what they said and once to hear what they didn't. Nobody said I'm sorry like they meant it. Nobody complained, we didn't treat you well. They simply wanted me back in position, to return to the role I had played for so long. But I was done playing it. So, I did not respond. I blocked that number. 3 months later, I was promoted. I moved into a better apartment and began having small dinners with people who genuinely wanted to hear what I had to say. Then one night, my mom sent me a message, saw you moved. Hope you're doing well. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. She didn't say what she did or didn't do. She didn't ask how I was.